Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the Medtech Business Academy podcast. We are so fortunate to be joined again by our friend Tiffany Wilson. If you remember Tiffany, she joined our episode for a look into the Science Center last year in April, and we're bringing her back. Tiffany Wilson has spent over 20 years bringing innovative medical technology from bench to bedside and is known globally for her thought leadership on innovation and commercialization in life sciences and healthcare technology. In October 2020, she was appointed president and CEO of the Philadelphia-based Science Center to lead the organization's next chapter focused on delivering economic, scientific, and civic impact. Tiffany, welcome back. How have you been?
Thank you. Busy. A busy time in the world right now, but I've been well, thanks. And thanks for having me back.
Wonderful. So talk to us about some highlights from this last year. Obviously, we've been seeing you, put out blog posts, lead panel discussions, but what are some of your high points?
So, I've really over the last kind of 12 to 18 months have really kind of been on a journey of helping folks understand what it takes to bring innovation to the point of impact. Obviously, our focus at the Science Center is supporting companies, innovators in life sciences and healthcare technology. But in this, always kind of refer to it as this weird world of kind of the intersection of innovation and startups and government and economic development. And it takes a village to get a new technology across the finish line, right? Mm-hmm. So what I really started to notice, I've been at the Science Center now for almost 5 years. And as I started to really kind of shift programming and the way we talk about things and the way we operate, I noticed that generally speaking, the general public is comfortable talking about innovation. It's super fun, right, to talk about innovation. And then we talk a lot about what impact looks like. We all agree that innovation is amazing. We want it to keep going. We all agree that we want the impact. And from whatever lens you're looking at, could be patient outcomes. It could be increased investment, right? It could be jobs. But I don't think, generally speaking, there's a good understanding of what actually has to happen for an innovation to get to the point where it can have impact. And so I've really kind of been on, and I'm happy to go further, but it's really been about, it's so logical in my mind how these pieces fit together and how do I break it into the pieces and bring the ecosystem along for that journey, because we need everyone to show up if we want innovation to have impact in our community, whether I'm in Greater Philadelphia, right, or in Florida or DC or West Coast. There is a process to it.
So impact, people think about the idea of impact, but, what is that? Is it the purpose? Is that, the ripples within the healthcare society? Tell our team a little bit. I mean, we've got all sorts of representatives from both the healthcare side, the actual HCPs, as well as medical technology. And everybody's being like, I've got this great idea. But I think that what are you guys using as criteria for impact? Because I think that is a lens that there are so many different ways that you could interpret that. But you get an opportunity to see so many. So what does that look like for you?
I think it depends on who I'm talking to, right? Elected officials want to see economic prosperity, economic mobility in the region. They want jobs. But as you both know, most of these technologies, it's a long game, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking about launching a startup and adding 1,000 employees next year. This is kind of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And so we have to get comfortable thinking about the long game. And kind of setting expectations for that. Same with investment and returns, right? There needs to be a healthy understanding of what has to happen and kind of the leadership required to get something across the finish line. But the way that I really kind of break it down is, and related to, say, medtech and life sciences, even digital health, for innovation, right? Lots of in academic centers, right? Lots of research, lots of breakthroughs, lots of unmet needs that need to be solved, that an entrepreneur might come up with an idea for something. But in order for it to start to have an impact, it has to become a company, right? It can't be a research project if you want long-term impact. And what does that mean? Okay, so I have to form a company, and then I have to raise capital. And we're not talking about, a $10,000 loan. What is that capital for? Mainly the early stage capital is all about risk mitigation, right? And I think about that in three key buckets. Technology, right? Risk. Can you make whatever you're going to make at scale? Regulatory risk. Can you get it through FDA if that's required? And the commercialization risk. Does someone want to buy it and pay for it over and over again? In today's entrepreneurial ecosystem, and I'll just talk about the US right now, there are mechanisms. Entrepreneurs can figure out how to make whatever they're going to make, right? If they can be engineered and manufactured at scale, people can figure that out. There's a pathway for that. There are regulatory pathways, not always fun, a little ambiguous right now with the changes, but I'll leave it at that. But there's still guidance, right? There's amazing resources on the FDA's website. You find a good regulatory advisor, right? There's a pathway. Mm-hmm. Commercialization. Who is your customer? Recognizing that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you could sell an orthopedic surgeon on a new implant and, call it a day. But today, kind of who is the decision maker? Of course, you need to have the surgeon champion, right? But what does value analysis look like? What does the CFO want? What is their priority this year? A lot of these new technologies have digital solutions. So you've got to have not only the surgeon, but kind of the head of IT. And, I don't know if anyone read the news lately, but hospital margins are, right, very slim. And everyone's they want the innovation, but they want it how they want it, when they want it, and to pay for it. The challenge becomes startups and early stage innovators don't know how to have access, or there is no front door and no consistent front door into healthcare. And so it's interesting. Investors want to see a go-to-market strategy that is validated with real information, not just a hunch. And so when I talk to health system leaders, I ask them, how many calls do you get a day or emails from startups trying to figure out a way to pitch or get in? And, I've had someone say well, maybe 10 a day. And then I had one hospital CEO say a gajillion. But everyone's in this mode of delete, delete, delete. They just don't have the capacity. But let's say we could solve for that, right? Let's say there was a pathway for that. It still doesn't guarantee success and impact because you actually have to build a company and successfully execute. What does that mean, right? How do you move from a founder to become a CEO and continue to invest in your leadership journey and learning along the way? How do you run a P&L? How do you navigate resiliency when there's policy headwinds that you have no control over, right? And kind of really have that adaptable mindset. But that has to happen for a return on investment, for jobs, for economic development in a region. And so I've been encouraging, my team at the Science Center and some of the work that we're doing through our program and strategy evolution to kind of say, traditional acceleration that ends in a demo day, it's not enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not enough. And recognizing that just because a founder was successful in raising a Series A or a Series B doesn't mean that he or she has the leadership chops to continue to evolve. But also, leadership can evolve, right? So there's a narrative out there around, oh, well, you need to have, a CEO that's been there and done that to be able to fund the next milestone and things like that. Well, every CEO who has been there and done that started the first
somewhere,
right?
Started somewhere.
They started somewhere. And so I have been paying attention and really recognizing, look, leaders need to continue to learn throughout their lifetime, right? It's never kind of a one and done deal. Mm-hmm. And that kind of support from a capital readiness, from a leadership development is really needed. Like, we need to pay more attention to that stuff if we're going to help start innovation, kind of grow into companies that is going to have an impact on society. And so really thinking about that and saying the words out loud of the things that I don't hear, but the things that I have noticed over the years of what separates companies that are successful in kind of growing versus those who still have an idea from 5 years ago and they've gone to 10 accelerator programs or pitch competitions, but still have no co-founder, right? It's time for us to move away from that and kind of invest in what really matters.
I really love all of that. It's like you're getting inside of our heads and things that we've been wanting to put together that we know need to happen and things. So you kind of asked my question for me a little while ago is, how do we make this different regarding the front door? This is something that I've been thinking so much about because there are so many health systems, there's over 6,000 registered with CMS and things. How do they really fine tune, this is what we need? Maybe There's a list. Where do I find those solutions to that list that I have? And then how do I filter the noise that's coming at me out there? So any thoughts around what seems to be successful or versions of that?
I can tell you kind of what we're doing right now, what we've started to kind of over the last 18 months been laying the groundwork to do, and what we're some kind of initiatives we're about to announce. And so I think when we spoke last time, I talked about, or when you and I caught up, I was kind of hearing kind of what keeps healthcare leaders up at night in terms of a cost perspective, and then where in the next 18 months, if technology could really move the needle, right? What in terms of improving patient outcomes, decreasing cost, and or increasing revenue. And so, there's the obvious challenges around labor cost, right, and supply chain. And I think we're hearing a lot about like ambient AI, note-taking, administrative stuff. From a disease state standpoint, kind of the top three continue to be that I hear about: cardiovascular disease, oncology, and kind of brain stuff, and which I'll kind of include some like neuromuscular, so orthopedics as well, and starting to kind of see some insights into kind of the next generation of orthopedic innovation with surgical robotics and things like that, which are kind of cool. At the same time, a lot of health systems have had to kind of dial back their innovation arms, right? Because it's expensive to do. And I have consistently seen over the last 15 years or so, this interesting kind of setup within health systems where there's the innovation arm, which is kind of cool and exciting, but it's very disconnected from the operations.
Very much so.
Even within the hospital, right? Doctors, nurses, technicians kind of coming up with all these amazing ideas and off to the races, yet never talk to supply chain, right? Mm-hmm. Or the kind of operations which is remarkable to me. So the conversations that I've been having around hospitals that actively work with startups, the early stage companies, and have their venture arms, their innovation arms. One of the things that's challenging to them is it takes a lot longer than they thought to work with a startup, right? Startups it's a unique organism working with founders, and they have varying degrees of coachability, right? An ability to navigate the complexity of what has to happen. Like, how do you build your company and your culture while you're navigating prototyping, contract manufacturing, biocompatibility testing, FDA feedback, right? Vendor certification, it's a lot to manage.
You're wearing 8 million hats at any
8 million
one day,
hats.
and you're trying to do it all with like you and a friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody just says, I just want somebody to start using this because it'll help patients, right?
Yeah. And the friend is a problem, right? we don't hire our friends, right? We've started to talk about, the kind of what really, kind of getting off topic a little bit, but I'll note that most of the failures that I've seen or the delay in success it comes down to people, right? Mm-hmm. Shady founders, not doing what they're supposed to doing, doing what is fun for them, but not in the best interest of the product moving to market. And so, you spin something out of a lab and you hire like, oh, well, this person I went to graduate school with, and I went to undergrad with this person, and I think they're in the med tech industry, so let me get them on board. And then all of a sudden you've created a really dysfunctional team, right? And then you just end up burning through burn rate, trying to like remediate friendships and relationships. And so you got to think about that from day one.
Yep.
So the conversations with health systems, I'm like, okay, so we all agree that the innovation is happening. We all want our communities to succeed. We want the innovation, but we want it how we want it. And we don't want to really deal with startups, and we don't want to talk to salespeople. Like I don't know if you've ever gone online to like link in with and kind of build a network of supply chain people and kind of value analysis. Like, they don't want to talk to salespeople. All right. They won't. They don't want to link in with you. They don't want your pitch. So it's really interesting. And so I kind of asked the question of, all right, so we speak kind of the team that I've built at the Science Center, we speak industry. We know what the industry wants. We know what they're looking for in an acquisition from a due diligence standpoint. We speak health system decision maker. We speak clinician. We speak payer. And we speak to patient groups, right? And so, if I bring, conversation to health system leader, if I bring you an company earlier than you're used to, well vetted, well coached, well prepped, well supervised, would you enable us to have earlier access to some decision makers, even for like an hour? I'm not talking about a pilot, right? Or a quarter of someone's time, really just to validate, is this an unmet need? Mm-hmm. What is, from your perspective, what does the competitive landscape really look like? What would this solution need to look like? What kind of economic data would you want to see? And then we come back and work with that company. Okay, this is what they mean by that. These are the experts in the ecosystem, right, around the country, who are the best and brightest in doing whatever X milestone needs to happen. Let's make that connection and kind of coach along the way. It's so more kind of hands-on, it's high touch. But I think, where I'm really kind of aiming for is how ultimately, by helping companies have that access and do that translation, can we shave time off a sales cycle? I don't know the answer to that, right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of where my curiosity is around capital efficiency. I've been really interested in capital efficiency really since kind of work I did in Atlanta, 15 years ago. Because that's, if I kind of outline a startup that raises a chunk of money and has to execute on milestones every day that they're not making progress towards that, they're burning through that capital,
Yep.
right? Whether they make any progress or not. So
Right.
in my mind, like every day matters, every relationship matters. I call them kind of the $1,000 day concept. Just because it takes, $100 million to get something, a new device or something to market, does it have to? Because from my lens, what I've seen and experienced, a lot of that is wasted time, dysfunctional teams, not following advice, having to go back and repeat studies, having to go back and put a quality system in place. And I'd like to say that it doesn't happen very often, but even with, resources like this podcast, with all of the stuff online, at the end of the day, I think humans are going to be humans. And so that's really where I've been kind of guiding our work at the Science Center and leveraging kind of this unique ecosystem in Greater Philadelphia where there's so many health systems. There's such a diverse patient population. There's a lot of unmet clinical needs. And as you guys know, in medtech, right, it's all about, in my mind, it's less about the science and more about solutions that really address unmet needs and where can science unlock that. But it has to
Absolutely.
be from a needs-based perspective. And not from I have this cool technology idea perspective.
Yeah, that's what we preach in value analysis is what is our real need? And we're not sitting around waiting for someone to come to us in value analysis. We're looking at all of our data. Where do we have these gaps? All those sorts of things. So we're not just a new medical device, group, and we're hanging around waiting for you to contact us. The mantra we're trying to project in value analysis, sort of representing it generally, is we want to make partnerships and have relationships because that's where things can happen. Because then you find out the true needs. Because the need of, say, one of the health systems in Philadelphia may be totally different than a health system in Pittsburgh or a health system in New York or California or Wyoming. So you have to know what those needs are and get in there and have those discussions. Because I would say to suppliers, who was your focus group when you invented this? Because no one is telling me they need this or they need it changed. So,
Barbara, I'm curious, through your experience in value analysis and building partnerships with companies and suppliers, along their growth trajectory, does kind of what I'm saying resonate with you in terms of, the people element of it? And startups they need to do their homework. They need to be nice human beings. They need to be partners, right?
They need to be prepared as well for that value analysis discussion.
Yeah, because at the end of everything, there is a human being. It's whoever is heads in beds or stretchers or whatever it is. And all along the way, those caregivers are also the human beings. And they need to have a say in this because it's them having to implement whatever it is. But you need to hear it, their pain point may be something so simple that doesn't cost much, wouldn't take much to reimagine, but no one's listening or asking those sorts of questions. So that's the kind of partnerships. And you were talking about that, and I'm going, yes, because that's how people learn.
Yeah. And that's where, what we see kind of on boots on the ground and what people have come to me over the years and say, Tiff, I know I can make this. I've got a manufacturing kind of scale up plan. FDA kind of was a pain, but I got through it. I answered all their questions and I can't get into the hospital to sell.
Yeah.
And so there's a real friction point there that ultimately it comes down to people are busy. Founders, suppliers don't know how to ask the right questions a lot of times, and they get distracted, which is easy to do because Colleen, as you said, you're wearing all the different hats and things like that, and kind of the 8 million things to do. And so, really just putting it out there that people need more help. And I have kind of positioned the Science Center as a intermediary where we know how to work with these companies, right? And coach founders and translate. This is what, this was what Barbara at Value Analysis really meant by that. And let's find the right partners to gather the information and make sure that you deliver, because you heard from them that they are interested in it. It solves a problem. Now let's make sure you're set up to be a good partner to kind of pilot and scale with them.
Yeah, so many new med tech companies think that once their goals are very lofty, like, well, if I can get into Intermountain and Common Spirit and Mayo, and I'm made and all the money's coming in, and that's kind of it. And they need to change that sort of thought process.
Fair enough. It used to work like that.
Yeah.
It used to work like that.
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of seen this with like a lot of we do a lot of work with Israeli companies and starting to see more kind of global, and people are like, well, my cousin's friend is a cardiologist at Mount Sinai in New York, or they're doing something in Boston, and if we get into Mass General, we're good. And I'm like, no. Like, and really understanding who is your target patient population. And that's what's kind of cool about what I'm enjoying about Philadelphia is we've got the best academic medical centers here, right? And we've got amazing kind of like the rural healthcare, right, that Penn State kind of runs. Out in the suburbs, you've got kind of the community hospitals, non-academic hospitals, lots of different, private pay, Medicaid, Medicare. There's just a lot here, diverse population to kind of test some of these ideas and concepts.
Yeah, you can't just cherry pick your population. It's got to be a good match.
Tiffany, you had just said something about, this kind of more global perspective of, it's not always just about the US. It's about how other organizations, global entities are looking at or partnering with the US market as well, or even externally. What trends are you seeing in that landscape?
A lot of amazing technology, a fundamental lack of understanding of how U.S. healthcare works. And let's be honest, like most U.S. citizens don't know how U.S. healthcare works. It's really hard, right?
Well, I will say, that's also changed in the last.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge for our U.S.-based startups.
Yeah.
But, you could have a solution and, raise $10 million in another country and done a very successful clinical trial or pilot launch in country where there's, more of a kind of universal healthcare approach. It doesn't guarantee success in the U.S. So some of the trends that I see kind of is that, and really understanding that, from a Medicare standpoint, state Medicaid standpoint, from a culture and infrastructure standpoint, every state is different. And unless you, like, people just don't understand how different that is, culture, norms, whether you're urban, rural, East Coast, West Coast, middle of the country, North, South. There's just a lot to navigate, and you can't really do it from afar. You need the right kind of guidance and reality, really understanding insurance, understanding culture and human factors, and how that is differentiated. But lots of great solutions. But like even in Europe, the scaling across Europe's really hard because of all the different regulations and payment models and
Yeah, it's the dollar that kind of gets in our way, either on the, planning innovation side or on that reimbursement. How do I get paid? How do we get paid? So all of that needs some sort of reform in some way so that people can get the care they need. You mentioned rural a little bit ago, and that's the population that right now is very worried about how am I going to make it through the next, 5 years as the founding.
Are there even going to be hospitals for me to go to within the next 5
years? Where do
years?
I have my baby?
Yes.
Right. It's very, very difficult. It was before COVID, got worse during COVID. Now it's, not looking up either. So, but there are just populations everywhere. And what makes one person different than another? Yeah. They all equally have to have access to some level of care and then be able to transition to a higher or different type of care, but within reason and reach.
Yes. Yep. It's a challenge. And so, what we have seen when companies have come through, we kind of revamped our U.S. market access program as part of my strategic plan. And as we've kind of piloted some of those, we have seen companies come in and make a decision, their week here in Philadelphia, that probably they're never going to be able to be in the U.S. market because what their solution offers, just the economics don't work. And then we've had other companies too who have been able to shift kind of their model and their go-to-market strategy to make it more U.S. market friendly. And that can happen in a week. But it takes kind of showing up and leaning into that and then being able to pivot. And that gets back to the human side of kind of leadership.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure catching up with you. I'm sure we're going to likely reach out to you sometime next year to be like, hey, what are you doing now? Just because.
Yeah, we'll see how the experiment works.
I was going to say, your years are so chock full of all sorts of great items. And I think one of the things that makes these conversations with you so special is the scope at which you get to see, these discussions unfold, or the number of companies that they touch. So really being able to bring in such a diverse perspective of I've seen this gamut, and here's the meat of what we've got going on. Yeah. I'm also going to do an absolutely shameless plug of you. I follow you on LinkedIn. If you do not follow Tiffany, she posts some really fantastic things. You should totally follow her. But I think one of my favorite things, and this really resonated to something you said earlier in this discussion, is speed is not a strategy. Innovation suffers when urgency is mistaken for insight. And that we are in a world right now where it's so go, 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 go. That the moment where you have to stop and look around and be like, am I even going down the right path?
Right.
Does this market make sense for me? Am I bringing good things to the table? Is such a valuable moment in time to say, hey, maybe the US market's not for me. Yeah. Or maybe I need to go back to the drawing board and do these different things for my supply chain to make sense so that my cost per unit is affordable. So I think that was just such a great call out. That was something that, when I read it the first time, was really like, man, it's so simple, but it's so meaningful in that moment of.
Thank you.
Sometimes you do have to pause to check your landscape.
Yeah. You got to slow down to go fast.
Yeah. Okay, so Tiffany, thank you again for our audience. It's been, such a pleasure. We're almost at our 100th episode of the Medtech Business Academy podcast, which seems crazy that we are here already. So that episode will be coming out shortly. If you have not already done so, be sure to subscribe to never miss a future episode. And thank you, as always, for joining us.